The Oxeye Daisy is one of the most beautiful plants. I'm trying to introduce it into my garden. The only reason why I like it, it's great for borders. And basically, once you do start planting it, you get so many flowers. Now, the thing about the Oxeye Daisy, that in Europe or North America, they take it as a very invasive plant because basically it grows in meadows, it grows in fields, it grows wild, it's a wildflower. But at the same time, we must actually appreciate the Oxeye Daisy because it is medicinal and it can solve a few of your medical problems. In general, I just love the plant and it grows very quickly, very easy to propagate and very easy to spread. So welcome back, I'm Alice, I'm the Red Soil Gardener. The Oxeye Daisy is a very interesting plant because, as I mentioned before, people do see it as invasive because basically it spreads its seeds far and wide. But the whole thing about the Oxeye Daisy, they're great to have it when you're mixing it in your flower bed because it just gives you that sprinkle of white daisy. And also they're great for just borders. So I want to introduce you to this plant, and I thought that the best way to do it is actually to look at the plant itself. Now, the first thing about the Oxeye Daisy is its leaves. The bottom bit of the leaves, the ones as they're new, as they're growing, is a bit big. It's bigger than the ones on the stem, and they've got these jagged edges. And as it grows taller, what happens is that the leaves become smaller. Now, the most amazing thing about these leaves is that Italians do eat the leaves and include it in their salad. I've never tried it, but I will in future. Now, the other thing about the daisy is then you get your sprouts, and out of these little sprouts from the stem is where you get your flowers. And so these are the little flowers that will come out. Now, the thing about the Oxeye Daisy, it likes to grow in clumps. So if you see this particular one, which I uprooted, is that all these little babies, which are a bit wilted, are what is in that clump. And actually, when you do look at the clump, it looks like a spiral effect and like a rosetta. Now, what I'm going to do is turn it over, and this is the rhizome. Do you see this? This is the rhizome here, and that's where you get all the rooting and all the baby sprouts actually come from the rhizome. And once you understand that, then you know how to propagate this plant. Now, the thing about this plant is that if I was to propagate it, I'm going to just cut it here in the middle of the rhizome. Give me a minute. Yeah. So if you see here, these are the baby shoots. So one of the ways to actually propagate the Oxeye Daisy is either you use the flower. Once the flower is spent and dry, you could use the seed, but the other way of doing it is actually, there's one baby, and if you notice, there is rooting on that plant. So what I'm going to simply do is, I've got, again, as I mentioned, well-drained soil here, and it's got holes at the bottom just to make sure that the drainage, we don't want it to be waterlogged. So all I'm going to do is make a hole here and just put that baby in. So what I'm going to do is just continue pulling, taking out the plant from the rhizome and just keep making my hole and planting it. And you just go on and on. But in the end, you'll get your Oxeye Daisy and you'll be very happy once you get your multitude of daisies. And so that's about it, really. So I am going to just look for some more. Let me take some Here is another one. And I'll keep the soil moist, not drenched, as we know, and check on it. And then once the rooting has really developed, I would actually, if it's a rainy season like what we have now, I would, for as long as the rooting looks good and the leaves get stronger, I would actually just place it straight into the garden. So basically, that is what I would do with the Oxeye Daisy. They do like full sun, and they do well in full sun, but they also do well in partial sun. But the beauty about them is that include them in your garden where you have a bit of color, and then you get these sprouts of white, or you have them along a border, keep them, you know, do a sort of clump of color. But they do so well, and in Europe they start blooming in the spring and in the autumn. This is one technique, and the other technique, as I mentioned, is the seeds. So you wait for your flower to mature, and once it gets spent, in terms that it dries, all these little florets which actually are in here, they will turn to seed. And these seeds, what you do, which I had collected, they look like this. Once you do have your seeds and you scatter them, is that you'll have two growth seasons, which is actually the springtime and the fall. So at least, you know, at that time you will get your abundance of white. But at the same time, what happens is that the seeds that you have planted after, let's say, after autumn, if you scatter, they will start forming their rosette in September, but it's usually after the cold season, that's when they start blooming. So good luck with your Oxeye Daisy. Although they are invasive, you can actually control them, and they are great in your flower beds, they are great as borders. Try it and see if it works for you. But for me, I'm definitely putting them in my garden. So thank you so much for being with us through this channel. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe and press that notification button, and also write to us and tell us your experience with Oxeye Daisies. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.